frenzy with Canucks general manager Jim Benning. You make a big news announcement bringing in Louis Eriksson. Just tell fans why you've decided to go with this player.
He can't skate, he's not effective, he's not intense, he can't play anymore.
Like, there were times where I didn't notice him at all.
No, he's terrible.
And then there were other times where I knew he didn't break a sweat.
No matter who you are, or what you did for a franchise, a couple bad signings can ruin your reputation in that team for decades. Because whether it was a terrible free agency signing, or giving away too much money to a homegrown talent, we've seen signings single-handedly get a GM fired. Peter Chiarelli, a man who has somehow become a cult legend on the RTH channel. Hired in April of 2015, Chiarelli had one of the most chaotic times as a GM in the modern NHL era. Because whether it was questionable drafting, signings, some of the worst trades in NHL history, Peter Chiarelli would be criticized heavily in almost every single aspect you can criticize a GM. Even from his first trade, you knew right from the start, this probably isn't gonna go too well.
Edmonton trades picks number 16 and 33 to the New York Islanders in exchange for Griffin Reinhart. No.
However, shockingly, the final nail in the coffin was a signing. Back in 2015, when Chiarelli took over, the Oilers always had an issue when it came to having that consistent number one goaltender, as they were one of those teams who were constantly rotating in new goalies, praying that one of them would just work out. So, in 2015, Chiarelli would trade for Cam Talbot, and at the time of this trade, it was celebrated, as Talbot was finally providing some consistency in net. So combine this with the fact that you had the opportunity to build a team around McDavid, things were looking up. But after an electrifying playoff performance in 2017, Talbot would begin to steeply regress. So much so that the Oilers would begin panicking to find a new goaltender. And well, they did. But not from the NHL, as Peter Chiarelli would recruit Mikko Koskinen from the KHL. And so the fact they got him on a one-year tryout in the NHL for $2.5 million, well, it wasn't the worst idea. So, in 2019, Koskinen would play 55 games. He wasn't terrible by any means, but with a .906 save percentage, he wasn't the savior the team needed. And so the next season, Chiarelli had a really tough decision. Does he try to re-sign Koskinen to make sure he stays, or do they have to go through this goaltending limbo once again? So, on January 21st, Koskinen would sign a 3-year, $13.5 million contract with a no-trade clause. A shocking contract for a goalie who had one mediocre season in the NHL at the age of 31. And I kid you not, the very next game, versus the Detroit Red Wings, who, keep in mind, were a bottom team in the NHL, with Koskinen in net, after going down in the game heading into the second intermission, Chiarelli would be fired mid-game. Mid-game! And don't get me wrong, the Koskinen signing didn't single-handedly get him fired, and since being signed, Mikko has had some respectable seasons. But it was more to do so with the complete and utter incompetence. With an Oilers team who already have cap issues, Chiarelli risking $13.5 million in cap was suspect. So add this to the numerous other suspect moves. After losing to the Detroit Red Wings, no offense to Detroit, it was truly the final nail in the coffin for Chiarelli. Next, we have the horrific track record of David Nonas. And of course, if you enjoy the videos, make sure to press subscribe for some more awesome hockey content. As I record this video, we are only around 3,000 subscribers away from 40,000. So if you can, your support would really make my day. After taking over as general manager of the Leafs in 2012, just like Peter Chiarelli, David Nonas would start his tenure with the Leafs with a boom. Or maybe a thunk, a clunk, that's probably a better way to describe it. Because one of his first moves would be to sign one of the most infamous contracts in NHL history. as he would sign David Clarkson, who, keep in mind, was a bottom 6 grinder, to a 7-year, $36.75 million contract. And to give you some context, Clarkson was that great bottom 6 player, as he played with grit, he could fight, and put up goals in that supplementary role. In 2011, he put up a career-high 30 goals. But this season was also very suspect. It was an outlier. Yes, he did perform great, but he was more so of a 15-goal scorer who just had the perfect season. Because after joining the Leafs with his massive contract, Clarkson would put up 5 goals. $37 million for 5 goals. The next season he put up 10, but it was evident that Clarkson was never going to live up to that contract. In fact, he would be traded 2 years into a 7-year contract for an injured Nathan Horton. Just a bizarre situation. But that's not it. He would also give Dion Phaneuf.
Leeson, look out! Phaneuf had him lined up and just missed him. It's a double Dion. Is it off? Wham! Wham!
An extremely questionable 7-year, $49 million deal. So over $80 million in terrible contracts. Probably the perfect way to make ownership hate your guts. However, Nonas' last trade would somehow top both of these. And personally, I think it's such an absurd signing, it doesn't get talked about enough. Ladies and gentlemen, after breaking his right leg, not once, but twice, in the same season, at the ripe old age of 38, David Nonas would give Stefan Robida a 3-year, $9 million contract. Robida would play 52 games for the Leafs, was a defensive liability every single time he was on the ice, and he put up only 7 points. Almost $10 million for a bottom pairing veteran that broke his leg twice. Because Nonas was basically like, hey billionaire Leafs owners, do you like $100 million? Well, do I have the proposition for you? How about instead of winning, we just give it away. We just give it away. And right after that season, Nonas would of course be terminated. Known for his extremely questionable signings. Signings that will go down as some of the worst in NHL history. Next, we have Dale Talon. After taking over the reins as GM in 2010, Talon and the Florida Panthers had one goal. Bring Florida a Stanley Cup. A very cliche goal, but a goal nonetheless. And being that the Florida Panthers were in need of a complete system overhaul, it was always expected that this was a long-term vision. So, after years of losing in high-end draft picks, after a year where Nick Bjugstad was your leading scorer with 38 points, in 2015, Dale Talon would make the decision that it was time to finally start indulging in free agency. To start, he would give Dave Bolland, a bottom 6 grinder, a 5-year, $27.5 million deal. A very questionable contract from the start, as Bolland was seen as a third-line center at best, who, keep in mind, at this point was also building up an extensive injury history. And as we all predicted, it would age horribly, as Bolland would put up 23 points in his first season, 5 points the next season, and would call it quits altogether in 2016 after failing to pass his physical. 5.5 million AAV. But after having a 10-year run, the final straw was in 2019. Because after losing Luongo, Dale Talon was panicking to find that number 1 goaltender. And so he would offer Sergei Bobrovsky a 7-year, $70 million deal. The second highest paid goalie in NHL history. And unfortunately, this past season, Bob would historically have the worst season in his entire career. And now, don't get me wrong, Bobrovsky still may bounce back. But the point is that Talon had a 10-year time frame to form a competitive team. The average tenure of a GM is approximately 5 years. So Talon basically had double that window to follow his vision. And so for a team who has tax advantages in a highly desirable location, making the playoffs twice in a 10-year span was unacceptable. And after giving Bob one of the biggest goalie contracts in NHL history, after drafting and building a good foundation on top of hiring Quenneville, Talon would be fired after a very disappointing finish this past season. But anyways guys, what is your team's worst signing in team history? I know as a Canucks fan, Louis Eriksson will always be that legend. It is crazy how one bad signing like Louis Eriksson can taint a GM's name in that fan base forever. Because Jim Benning isn't even known for drafting, Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson. Rather, he's known for signing Louis Eriksson. But anyways guys, if you enjoy the videos, make sure to press subscribe for some more awesome hockey content. We've been on the grind recently, we've been on a roll, and I really appreciate all of your support. So, I hope all you guys are doing well. See you guys later.